Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth, logos means a study or science. Sattology means the science of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means the science of fake lie imagination or study of fake lie imagination. But 2021 was a very eventful year. We all know what happened and the whole world was struck. But the propaganda machines kept working. And I have a very, very good friend and a special guest all the time. Without delay, let us welcome Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Welcome, Abhijit.
May the blessings of our Lord in Christ be with all our viewers.
So this is a new avatar of Abhijit, where he is trying to become the new Pope of the world. Anyway, the propaganda machine in 2022. So if you recap the propaganda machine in 2021, and now you see the propaganda machine 2022, what areas do you think will be their focus?
It doesn't matter what their area of focus is. I think after what we've seen with COVID, with Trump, with everything pretty much, nobody trusts the propaganda machine anymore. They got rid of the man who was who's the inventor of mRNA from Twitter for medical opinions. Imagine a software company with people who haven't studied medicine in their lives, depending on humanities to do fact check a medical opinion and getting rid of it. Right. We've seen this with the 6th January inquiry. We've seen this with, Russia Gate, etc., 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 etc. By the way, nobody's actually seen the video, the PP tape or whatever. The point is, the more we should actually be praying that the propaganda machinery extends itself more and more and more and censors more, because the more they do it, the more forceful the backlash is going to be. And hopefully we can, I don't know how many of you have watched the movie The Purge. I secretly hope it does come true.
In 2022, if you look at all the countries of the world, you correctly said that most of the media outlets, it was very surprising that one story will be carried over by everybody. You all know, even the talking points, like the toolkit was an excellent example, that one message was being tweeted by everybody together, and including some of the leading thinkers. And nobody is closer to you right now if you compare with Rahul Gandhi. So the leading thinkers like Rahul Gandhi and other people, thinkers, I would say, maybe a demagoguery, whatever you say, but they all said the same thing. In the US also, we had the same problem. Fox News and CNN were all saying the same thing. So what is the media role in this propaganda machine?
Well, they're part of it. No, they're part of the. I think people make the mistake of calling it the deep state. There never is anything called the deep state anywhere in the world, unless you have entrenched military dictatorships like, say, Egypt or Pakistan. It was true of Indonesia till some time back. Now, not the case anymore. Especially in America, when people say the deep state, it's a bit rich. What you have is a sort of united interest set where everybody schmoozes with the other person and they're interlinked with businesses and things like that. And they tend to have common interests. It's the way Qatar funds Brookings, and Brookings ends up putting the most outrageous rubbish on Syria, which generally supports the Qatari point of view. Now, mind you, it wasn't Qatari money that bought Brookings' editorial line. It was the fact that Brookings already had that editorial line, and Qatar found it particularly useful to buttress that editorial line because it fit in with their own views, right? So I think Fox has tried to be different. But I remember once upon a time, they all used to keep saying, oh, Fox, it's not really journalism, this, that, la-di-da-di-da. Fox is so horrible, Fox is so bad, Fox is so this. Today they've all become an exact mirror image of Fox or whatever it was. I mean, I'm not saying CNN is bad or the Hindu in India is bad or Fox is bad or whatever, but whatever they are, they're all carbon copies of each other, just different sides of the spectrum.
Isn't it true that 2021 saw US emerging as a police state to a large extent, where
Well, I
everything.
think a lot of places emerged as police states because remember, states love taking power away from the people. See, it's a constant balance between the institutions of government where, you know, the executive branch will always try to extend its power, which is why you have the judiciary holding it back. And sometimes the legislature will have excessive power, which is kind of defrayed by the judiciary and controlled to an extent by the executive. The problem here was there was no pushback. The judiciary went along, the executive went along because it suited everybody's interests to have certain curbs and restrictions. But this isn't the first time. If you remember when the Patriot Act was introduced in the wake of 9/11, how was that any different? Everybody went along with it. So, this is very, fear does that to societies, right? Fear will always do that to societies. I think the issue here is the kind of blatant double standards you're seeing in enforcement and imposition, and how one particular ideology seems to control way too many institutions. That's never a good idea.
Now, coming back to the propaganda machine in Asia, one of the biggest propaganda machines has been the Chinese Communist Party. And they have their, what Kashmir is to Pakistan, how Kashmir destroyed Pakistan in a way. The same thing is happening with China. Taiwan is destroying China. Not just Taiwan, South China Sea, Taiwan, and to large extent their enmity with India. All three have been destroyed, but the propaganda machine goes on. What do you have to say on the Chinese propaganda machine?
So, see, the Chinese propaganda machine by itself is very crude, right? It's very easy to see through the Chinese propaganda machine. I think the issue is where Chinese propaganda fails, Chinese money succeeds. Like I said, once you have business interests with China, you're not exactly going to be going after China. It's the same Brookings Qatar alliance, right? Effectively, for most of the last, when did the Syrian civil war break out? 2011. Essentially, for the last 10 years, Brookings has been the intellectual front effectively for Al Qaeda. I mean, fact. Now, it's like that with businesses. When a lot of their prosperity depends on China, Chinese investment, Chinese business, your factories being in China, the arbitrage, the cost differential of being able to operate in China and things like that, and the access to the market, you are ultimately going to align with that, right? It's the same reason you pick your family over somebody else. Now, some people might not pick their families, but overwhelmingly, 98% of the people will follow that dictum. I'm with my brother against my cousin, and with my cousin against everybody else. That's pretty much going to be the case. So with Chinese propaganda, it's crude, it's very easy to see through, but it's largely managed more by Chinese money and the Chinese economy. It's very important we understand it's not bribes, so that is also a small part of it. It's something, it's that general shared interest that everybody had. For example, Hunter Biden's business partners. Everybody, including PBS, said that this is a non-story. Apparently, Russiagate and Trump being on prostitutes is a story, but Hunter Biden doing something very similar, being compromised and having shady deals, is not a story. How does that work? You figure that out. It isn't explained by somebody controlling everyone, but it is explained by shared interests.
One of the biggest stories of 2021 was obviously the pandemic, and how countries after countries fared for third wave, second wave, and all kinds of things happened. And US had the worst record in controlling COVID, and partly due to the American citizens' right to freedom. And I agree with them also, because they have a right to choose or not to choose. But the thing is, this is the what highlighted 2021. And apart from that, the military intrusions of China into their border, into the neighboring countries. South China Sea was one example. Tibet was another example. Now, slowly, the world is recognizing that Tibet is an occupied territory globally. That mindset is coming out now. And also, so why do you think in such harsh times for the rest of the world, Chinese continued their uh, aggression, military aggression?
It was the best time for them to be doing it. Look, they wanted to get, it's several different reasons, nothing monocausal. First, they felt that the rest of the world was in absolute chaos and they could get away with a lot of things. The second issue is she is going through a lot of domestic problems as well. So they need some kind of external diversion and things like that. You see a lot of the infrastructure investments, the bad infrastructure investments coming home to roost. You need to divert from that. So it would be a lot of things coming together. The military was also getting restive, because you have this military that you're spending a lot of money on. You've destroyed its general staff, right? She has either purged them or shifted them around so badly that there is no real cohesive military thinking in China at the moment, at least at the tactical level, at the ground level. You also need to find them some kind of a thing to test them, so to say.
See, one of the things which comes up here, and a little bit on the funnier side, the Biden administration in the US, on their first day, they declared they're going to go everything, whatever Trump did. But towards the end of the year, they accepted what the Trump did in terms of southern immigration border wall. And so everything else was a propaganda. And all the practical decisions made by the Trump administration were done by them. And so the whole USA was divided on Trump versus Biden. But in the end of the year 2021, we see all the Trump era decisions coming back. So wasn't it a fall for Biden administration, according to you?
Look, is it really even the Biden administration? Is Biden really alive? I mean, I honestly think he's already like a comatose cadaver in a sense, right? Does Kamala actually have power? From everything I'm hearing from DC, it's a whole set of Democratic Party insiders, and even there's no cohesion. So they're push and pulls at different angles, a policy going in different directions. You remember, Biden said he was going to get rid of COVID. It's a central response. There's going to be this thing. And now he's delegated it all to the states. It was the same in India, by the way. When the second wave hit us really bad, 5-6 months before that, in September of 2020, power had been redelegated back to the states. They failed miserably. And then after the entire thing was over, the center took back the power. So you see this happen a lot. So yeah, in many ways, I think that, what was that word? Was it Trump mania?
Yes, Trump
or Trump phobia, whatever.
Trump mania.
I think it was that Trump derangement syndrome. That's it. I think it's actually a certifiable thing where you'll oppose things just for the sake of opposing it because you hate the guy so much. I personally think he did a lot of good, and I've told you that several times. Where if people were less hung up about Trump the man, they would actually see a lot of the good that he did. But yeah, they're going back to it. There's lots of time lost, but anyway.
So towards the end of December, in December 2021, International Islamophobia Prevention Act was passed by the US Congress. It has not gone to the Senate yet, but most probably likely it is going to is going to pass in Senate also, because there is a guilt, white guilt. And by the way, want to put a disclaimer: I don't believe in white and brown and skin color. I don't believe in skin color. But just to say, there was a white guilt, and that's why it got passed, and it's going to pass the Senate too. Now, do you think it is a funny act? Because how can they silence people's free speech? Where and the act says and for other purposes. It's one of the most vaguely drafted uh, acts in the U.S. Congress ever in the history, and there are more chances of misusing. It also bypasses USCIRF. It bypasses State Department to a large extent, and the foreign policy. Is this a propaganda, or is it really something to do with really protecting the any kind of speech against Islam?
See, I've always held Ilhan and Rashida to be the most absolutely execrable characters I've ever had the misfortune of laying my eyes on. Now, is detesting Ilhan and Rashida Tlaib Islamophobia? Hmm? That said, we should acknowledge that there is Islamophobia. Okay. And we also need to acknowledge that Muslims have been the biggest victims of radical Islam, which has probably killed hundreds of thousands more Muslims than it has Hindus or Christians ever. Just like Germany. The Germans were the first victims of Nazism. Now, every religion, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, has its radical elements who cause a lot of damage. Why single out just Islamophobia? There is such a thing as Christian phobia. There is such a thing as Hindu phobia. Pointlessly ascribing to religion what a social trend is. Let me give you an example. The socially horrific policies of medieval Europe would all be ascribed to Christianity. And yet I would tell you almost every society in that particular setting, irrespective of the religion, would have reacted pretty much the same way. Today, you look at first world Christianity in Europe, it's very different from third world Christianity in Central Africa. And Central African Christianity, where they would still go around killing homosexuals in Uganda and Nigeria and Kenya, would be very much like medieval European Christianity. Now, coming to the bill, do I think it will pass? I really don't know. Will it stand? I think not. I think there'll be a very good framework for it to get challenged in the Supreme Court. And anyway, we know the Republicans are winning the midterm, so it might not. Either way, between the Supreme Court and the midterms, it's not going to hold.
The most surprising thing was all the congressmen which the Indian Americans gave money to, they acted immediately supported this. And so do you think the Indian Americans get easily carried away by propaganda, or they generally just want to go for a photo op?
With due apologies to you, Adi, you know my absolute contempt for Indian Americans, including large parts of my own family that are the biggest yuppies in desperate need of white man validation. And I'm using the term white man very loosely because it used to be white man validation. Now it's a validation of, well, the powers that be. No, I see it as deserving of contempt. They're sad, pathetic jokes. Indian Americans are the most pathetic creatures you'll ever come across. You know, they can't get over the color of their skin. They can't claim victimhood. Are they white? No. Are they black? No. What are they? They're either Brahminical oppressors or they're Hindu oppressors, and everybody knows that Hinduism is the most evil religion on earth. So unfortunately, they can't make it onto the woke bandwagon, so they need to double over and bend over for wokeism kind of becomes even stronger. So it's quite cute watching baboons behave like baboons. It's, you know, it's the natural thing. You know, I mean, if you put a baboon into a tree, a baboon's going to climb, man. And the Indian in America is doing what the Indian in India does: suck up to the most dominant narrative that can get them the most social validation or social visibility or whatever.
Many Indian Americans in Minnesota 05, Ilhan Omar's constituency, they fund her campaign. Many of them.
Yes, yes. Alas, my family too.
By the way, if I have to go in the light side, will I call Ilhan Omar the most active US congressman of 2021? Can I call her?
Did you just presume her gender? See, I think Ilhan Omar is a gender bigot because she uses she. I think anybody using he or she is also a bigot. I think gender binarism is a bigot.
Good point. I think.
Yeah. I think we're all trans to some level, and I think we should all use trans appropriate words. But no, I think Ilhan Omar is somebody. I almost think of Ilhan Omar as an Indian. Almost. That need to be relevant, the need to be seen. You know, she could as well have a name like Lakshmi Omar or something like that.
She'll be very happy if she watches this video.
Actually not. She might put a fatwa on me and get me beheaded. Huh?
Anyway, she can't do that because she's an American citizen. You're Indian.
She can't. No, but she can put a fatwa.
Yeah, fatwa. Yeah, okay.
Or she can get her dear friend Erdogan to put a fatwa on me.
Fatwas are, anyway, the fatwa politics. What do you think in 2022 then? And actually, I forgot one question. One question was, after Ilhan Omar was Rahul Gandhi. Would you consider him the most active Indian politician who spread a lot of propaganda for others in India?
No, again, look, Ilhan Omar and Rahul are kind of very similar. Actually, Ilhan is much smarter than Rahul. To give Ilhan credit, she knows which side of her toast is buttered. Rahul is genuinely stupid, but also genuinely dangerous. So I would think of Rahul Gandhi as a Labrador who never learned bite inhibition. So, you know, bite inhibition, a Labrador is so gentle. I mean, they're complete goofballs. They jump all over you and, you know, take your hand in their mouth, but they're so gentle. They can actually carry an egg without breaking it. I haven't met a single Labrador that didn't try to take my hand in its mouth. A lot of people mistake it as biting. It's not. And they're extremely gentle. It's the way of holding their hands, you see. People hold hands. Doggies take your hand in their mouth. And Labradors do. It's a characteristic trait. Goldies do. But what if that Labrador never learned bite inhibition? A Labrador's jaw is so powerful, it'll just crunch your hand completely, the bones and everything. I think that's the problem with Rahul Gandhi. He's basically a Labrador who never learned bite inhibition. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the intelligence of a Labrador. He's more the brains of a Chihuahua in the body and temperament of a Labrador with the lack of bite inhibition of a Rottweiler.
So in fatwa politics, global fatwa politics, and I don't think so Ilhan Omar can call any Muslim cleric to raise a fatwa for her. Not possible, because the Muslim community. She can. Okay. So, but if you
look, she can't get 99% of them to do it. But 1%, look, I mean, come along, man. Like, you tell me, is it particularly tough for me to find a Hindu priest who's willing to say caste is the most important thing and anybody who eats beef should be killed? I can find 100,
True.
right? So, yeah.
Now, coming back to the fatwa politics, do you think 2022 has any scope for fatwa politics? Again, I'm repeating the question.
I think the scope for fatwa politics hasn't ended yet, because the center of fatwa politics used to be funded by Saudi Arabia. Now Saudi Arabia is cracking down on all of that. Look, fatwas come from a very different place. They come from a concept of ijtihad. Ijtihad is, it's the same word as jihad, but ijtihad is the internal introspection process. Because, Muslims reject clericalism. They reject sacerdotalism. So you don't need a priest or a padre to intercede with the gods on your behalf. Every Muslim has a personal relationship with God, and every Muslim has a right to interpret for themselves. Now, the problem with that is with the Shias, you won't find too much of this, because with the Shias, there's a very clearly codified Ayatollah system where only people who have studied properly are allowed to issue fatwas. With Sunnis, it's very different. Anybody can issue a fatwa. It's actually a sign of excessive democracy within Sunnism. Not the way you like to think of democracy, but call it civil participation. If NGOs get their dream come true, then the world will be full of fatwas, because that's what civil society, individual rights nonsense peddled by NGOs, the ideal world, where there are no inhibitions or whatever, get put out. That's kind of where Sunni Islam is at the moment in certain parts of the world, where anybody can issue a fatwa. So obviously you're going to get fatwas.
Now, in 2022, the Chinese aggression now with the new COVID variant has come in, and it has become a trend in last 3 years that there is a new, just like a new year resolutions are announced, a new variant is already there from January. Now we have a new one now. And so do you think 2022 is going to go the same way as 2021, fighting pandemic plus Chinese aggression all over the world?
Yeah. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing, because the more and more people get fed up with state overreach, the more forceful the pushback is going to be. I want the state to overreach, because the erosion of civil liberties has gone so far now. You need an extremely violent pushback against the state now.
The 2021 saw extraordinary Wall Street performance. Extraordinary. People have made billions, and most of the companies are growing like crazy right now. And but the person on the ground is struggling in the US tremendously. The amount of the taxes that Americans have paid to the IRS and the amount of taxes which Indian people have paid to the IRS, the growth and the pandemic and the general moroseness of the society is completely mismatched. So 2022 also, I foresee the growth.
But it's the same in India as well.
Yeah, true.
It's the same in India as well. Ambani and Adani increased their personal fortune by several times over, I think, while ordinary people suffered. Why is that surprising? I think it's that would have normally been grounds for a lot of anger, but I think people are a lot more angry with what's happened with COVID to be focusing on that too much at the moment. I think in America, you've also got an inflation problem right now. So I think that's, I think between inflation and COVID, it's a fantastic way of diverting attention from the amount of money billionaires made. I think millionaires lost money. You had to be a billionaire to make money.
Exactly. The top 1% has become, is become top 2% right now. You can say, if you compare it with 2018, it's almost double their wealth. Now, coming to in 2022, as the Padre of Hope today, that's what the avatar you took today. What is your message to all the people that you would like to give?
Rebel against the system, man. Rebel against the system. Just go out, and if you're going to accept more socialism, always leads to an erosion of individual rights, and it's always masked up as liberty.
Thank you.
Okay, just go out there and break down everything.
That was a message of anarchism, but anyway, thank you for coming on the show. And I know you have health issues, and I hope you get well soon from behalf of all our teams. And thank you very much, Abhijit, as usual. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.